Lords, I rise to add my name to those regretting these reckless regulations, and I'm particularly saddened because they're just one element of a multi-pronged attack on our farmers, the supply trades and the entire food chain in one of the most important industries and sectors in our economy. I declare my interest in that I am involved in farming, but more particularly in the agricultural supply trade, in the fertiliser industry. So I know more than most the damage and the harm the government is doing to those people who live in the sticks. Now, listened carefully to Lord Rooker, and he said he hadn't got an interest, but my lords, we all have an interest in the food industry. We have to eat every day, and food in your belly is more important than a food over your head. And the truth is that these regulations are harming a sector that needs finance in order to be sustained, to invest and to grow. And I don't know what rural Britain has done to deserve this metropolitan-based government that has turned an understandable and instinctive indifference to outright hostility. And like Lord Rooker, I don't blame the noble Baroness, the Minister. The truth, the fault does lie elsewhere. She's always been most courteous and honourable and acts with integrity in this House, and we thank her for that. But the truth is this government must be held to account because their actions are harming today's farming profitability, which drives tomorrow's corporation tax revenues. They're damaging the long-term capital underpinning of the industry, which harms investment, innovation and growth. And it's collapsing the cash flow, that financial lifeblood that makes it all happen. And I want to talk each of those three elements in turn. Profitability. And it's a shame Baroness Battles, who is meant to be leading for the government in a review, isn't in her place. But she would have told us, had she been here, that farmers are already under terrible, tremendous financial pressure, caught in that pincer movement between low grain prices and elevated input costs. Tighter margins are pressured by the national insurance rises, and now there are these inexplicable plans to persevere with a fertiliser tax that could add a quarter to the cost of the most expensive input, flipping even break-even businesses into loss. On the balance sheet, the effect of the agricultural property relief element of the inheritance tax has been well ventilated, and I won't dwell too much on that now, save that it is the effect on the business property relief, slightly different, that particularly harms the self-starting, innovative and entrepreneurial tenant farmers who live by their wits because they didn't have the good fortune to inherit the land free of charge upon which they make their living. But the effect of all of these in combination is to remove the long-term generational incentives to invest in the farm, to develop the countryside and the landscape, protect nature, and yes, in so doing, sustain wealth in our islands, and particularly in the shires, where, let's not forget, 90% of businesses employ 10 people or less. I've heard the arguments there, well, the IHT can take 10 years to pay. But, my lords, those annual instalments over 10 years would be more than would be paid by the rent. It's just in cloud cuckoo land. Now, landed estates, for the most part, have already incorporated in one form or another or transferred to trusts. So once again, those farmers left behind, the smaller farmers, totally contrary to what the Lady Minister said, Labour is targeting with these effects the little guys, the sole traders, the family partnerships, particularly in the less favoured areas, whilst allowing those larger, more corporate farmers, the ones she says have the broadest shoulders, off the hook. The summary cancellation of slurry lagoon grants that more than anything could help solve the problem of river pollution. The cancellation of those twin truck cabs on the pickup vehicles. And let's be clear, these pickups are tools of trades. They're as good as a tractor. They're the sort of thing that a man in a factory would have as a crucible. They are part of the plant and machinery involved in the business. It just underplays how it's a spiteful, really, misunderstanding of how investment in plant and machinery works. And all of these contribute to this £80,000 a year profit cap on aspiration, which is the number that through EBITDA gets you to the £1 million upon which APR and BPR kicks in. By stopping that aspiration, how are we going to grow an economy? And this is what's happening. So yes, I do take sympathy with what Lord Rooker said. This is the Treasury holding the economy down, not letting it flourish. Now, insofar as cash flow is concerned, and we've mentioned these delinked payments, I just do want to put a number on this. Because, and I don't know why the number is, but I've got it in front of me, a specimen 680 hectare farm that would have received £160,000 in 2020 will receive just 7,200 this year, over and above all those other financial headwinds that I've mentioned. And the black zero is the best many farmers can now expect. And how does that help everyone? And it's particularly important, because I don't want to dwell too much and repeat the points my noble friend Lord Roborough made from the front bench, but there was that interplay between the Delinked Payments and the SFI, and by taking one away, the contract between government, DEFRA, farming, the food industry, as well as the supply trades, has been broken. That knock-on to machinery dealers, contractors, auction marts, professionals, and those family businesses disproportionately affected in the countryside. So, my lords, in summary, no wonder people living outside the M25 and the urban conurbations think they're under attack from the cumulative effects of all these proposals in a concerted war on the countryside. The effect is also, astonishingly, to undermine the government's environmental objectives, because the effect of all of these is that if land is put under the plough, it must be pushed as hard as possible to get a return. Now, I suppose that leaves more land not ploughed for other environmental schemes. But in essence, it proves that Labour doesn't understand the countryside. But I tell you, the countryside now understands Labour. And the industry that is more than any others meets the most basic human need, food in your belly, is being made unviable, and rural communities are paying the price.